Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, and boy do we have something awesome to show you today. An absolute work of art, a thing of beauty. A general aviationer's dream, the FlightSimBuilder G1000 primary flight display panel. Time to see what it's all about. If you are interested in acquiring any of my overkills tutorial guides or simply interested in supporting the channel, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides as well as any future guides that come along down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below, and thank you to all of my current subscribers. Okay, you guys, so all joking set aside, a big shout out to FlightSimBuilder for sending me their G1000 PFD to do a review on. I'm super excited for this product, and I'm very, very happy to share it with you guys. I'm going to go through the unboxing here, as you guys are seeing on the screen here, more or less just showing you guys some of the features, letting you guys take a look at it and seeing how it's packaged and what you get coming out of the box. Most of my talk on from this point on will be more about the product and less about the unboxing, but we will be at some points talking about the overall feel, which we'll get into right now. The other thing that I want to actually real quick touch on, do not think that a product like this is just for those who fly the G1000. I have already flown this using the A320, the 737, the G36, the Cessna 172, and multiple different aircraft. Oh, and the TBM 930 using all of the radio panel functions. Obviously, the display is not the same as what you would find in any other aircraft, but having the access to your barometric pressure, your nav radio, your comm radios, your altitude, all of the different, the heading knob, course knob, all of those things that you are constantly messing with on the FCPs and MCPs in the airliners and the various different aircraft, you guys have access to with this one panel, as well as the autopilot modes that are right at your fingertips. So this is significantly a very diverse product. Do not think it is restricted to those who only want to fly the G1000. Speaking to the overall build, as you guys have hopefully been watching here on the screen, it is absolutely phenomenal what the work they have done here. All of the tactile buttons and switches, the tactile feel to them is absolutely solid and very, very well built. You can feel the strength and the well design behind each button. None of the other panels particularly move at all. I mean, you're going to see a little bit of wiggle behind some of the other buttons in the surrounding area, but that's actually pretty normal given these types of panels, as usually the buttons are one long strip of, for example, the option display panel, or a long strip of a single row of buttons. So you will see occasionally some wiggling on the button next to it. Now, they do also have a mounting metal bracket panel, which I just used to scratch my desk. Good on me. That was totally my fault, not theirs. But the mounting panel the thing that I really enjoy about this, and you don't have to use this if you have your own platform, if you have your own display. You guys will see later on in when we show that in the cockpit, mine is actually just sitting on top of my Flight Stand Pro for the moment because I haven't decided how I want to mount it yet. But the thing that I really enjoy about this particular mounting frame is it's very, very heavy. It's got a lot of weight to it. Now, I will be honest right up front. If you push on the buttons on the left-hand side, for example, the autopilot features, you may find that the left side moves a little bit. The other thing that I'm going to tell you guys is as a recommendation, if you do wish to mount this to something, as you can see, the mounting plate does have holes in it, pre-drilled for mounting purposes. Mount the plate before you mount the PFD into the frame. If you try to do the opposite, you risk possibly scratching the back of the PFD or just not being able to get your screws or mounting bolts in where you want them to begin with. So again, before you do what you're seeing here on the screen, make sure that you mount the mounting plate first. Now, you do not have to mount the mounting plate. You don't have to buy the mounting plate. This is simply just displaying the option here if you wanted to go with a desk mount solution. What actually mounts it was a pretty ingenious idea. They did 3D printed corner bezels, if you will. You simply unscrew the nut that I'm pointing at there, put the cap on, which creates the tension between the PFD and the mounting plate from the back side, put your nut back on there, and then there's an Allen wrench that they provide you. And honestly, I found that simply holding the nut with your fingers was enough. You don't have to get a wrench for it. The idea, again, remember, all this stuff is plastic. You are dealing with an LCD screen behind it. You don't want to crank it down too tight or you can risk cracking the frame. So I found personally for me that simply just using my fingertip to hold the nut in place while I use the Allen wrench up front was more than enough, and you guys will see what that looks like here in just a minute. Now, the only thing that was really difficult for me, you guys can see the size of the nut compared to my fingers there. Holding on to a couple of these was quite the pain in the butt, but that's just the nature of having big hands. But you guys can see here, just finger tight it for the moment, and then I went around with the other 3 corners, got them all tightened in, and then grabbed my Allen wrench and got them all locked in. So here I am putting the last one on. This overall setup process took a matter of minutes. It was very, very easy to do. The nice thing is the screws to mount them on are obviously already there because you guys saw me take the nut off. And here's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm using the Allen wrench in that top corner. The Allen wrench is up front. I'm holding the nut with my fingertips. And again, you saw how difficult it was for me to hold on to that thing. So you really don't have to put a lot of pressure onto it, especially that's going to a soft plastic. You don't want to over crank it. The idea is just to make sure it can't go anywhere. It's not like you're going to be banging it around. Once you get that all done, you guys can see here what the movement is like. And I do believe there you go. You can sort of see how that when you start getting up top and pushing on those upper autopilot buttons, that momentum force or that inertia goes a little bit higher, and that will allow the bottom plate to move just a little bit. Here we are in the pit, and this was such a cool experience. I just used the right control mouse click, dropped the, or exported the PFD out of the G36 in this case, dropped it into the FlightSimBuilder display, full screened it, and everything was perfectly fine. I didn't have to stretch anything. I didn't have to customize any of the image. It just, bam, everything lined up perfectly. Okay, so they really done a fantastic job. One of the coolest experiences about this entire situation was the simple ability that I no longer had to use the mouse and keyboard. The PFD itself was significantly easier to see. It was just an absolute joy to use this, and it felt cool. Now, what I am using here, and I want to stress on this part, is I'm using spad.next to map everything. I actually downloaded a profile that was already on there, and it looked like it was from FlightSimBuilder. So that was pretty cool. If you try to use the default mapping, I don't know that you'll have all of the options that go with it. So I would definitely do some research on that, and I'll try to do a follow-up video, you guys, and see if I can get everything mapped without using any kind of third-party software. I have sworn on SPAD Next ever since Microsoft Flight Simulator was supported. I have not used the in-game control scheme since then unless I'm put into a position where I absolutely have to. But the overall functionality of it was one-to-one and absolutely perfect. The one thing that was a little bit different is the top left, or I should say the mic 1 or radio 1 volume control in the top left corner of the PFD is actually the brightness for the backlighting on our display here, or on the keys. I don't think I actually show that in the video, is why I wanted to make sure to state that. So all the key backlighting you can actually turn up or down with that rotary up in the top left, the volume control. I think it's the volume control in the top right that does it. I'm sorry. Anyway, one of those two does it. As far as the smoothness and efficiency of it, everything was perfect. The response time you guys are seeing here live on the screen was absolutely one-to-one. Just about as quick as I could change something, it changed here. Now you guys are seeing that here I'm messing with the brightness of the PFD inside the actual aircraft. Unfortunately, that didn't, and this is an issue of Microsoft Flight Simulator, not an issue of the device, but unfortunately that brightness did not relay over to the PFD. So one thing that I would suggest to the developer, and I don't even know if there's a way to do this, I'm definitely not technically inclined enough to build something like this, but if there's a way to make that brightness knob or some sort of feature where the brightness actually controls the display itself that's sitting here, that would be a little bit more effective. But again, that's so minor. The overall display and the aesthetically pleasing atmosphere it provides was such a cool experience. This was one of the higher immersion points that I have felt in flight simulation. There's only been a few to top it. Obviously, nothing tops virtual reality if you can sustain a smooth and accurate experience. At the same token, one of the things that will be cool in VR is having this once you get the muscle memory down, or if you're able to get this panel into a position where you can easily access the controls, you'll obviously have all of those things right at your fingertips, and it'll make that part a little bit smoother too. Although at that point, it kind of negates the display, but that's neither here nor there, and that's preference. And then the only other thing that I think would ever, come close to this sense of immersion was obviously the motion pit. Motion simulation in conjunction with VR was the highest sense of immersion that I've ever felt in flight simulation. This one came right behind it. The immersive experience on top of the feature list was an absolute joy. It was just a joy to be able to see everything as you would in the real aircraft, to have that tactile feedback, to no longer need to reach for the mouse for 80% of the autopilot function that you would need to do, or have some bogus button or rotary that doesn't really line up to what you would expect to do. Even in the 737 and the A320 and the TBM 930, using this panel for all of its autopilot, radio, and barometric pressure functions was awesome. It was awesome to have all of that and have it actually say autopilot, have it actually say altitude. And then having the dual rotary encoders, having your hundreds of feet, having versus your thousands of feet. Same thing with your radio. The transponder code still worked just as well as it did with anything else. I had to do a little bit different mappings for the other aircraft in regards to the transponder, but again, nothing game breaking. And the transponder, on average, for our flight simulation purposes, you're probably maybe using once, maybe twice in a single flight. So if I have to reach out and grab the mouse for the transponder, not a big deal. Now, emphasize that was for aircraft that are not the Cessna 172, or not the G1000. The G1000, the transponder functionality works absolutely like it does in the real thing. You hit the transponder button on the options button at the bottom display and type in your code. So when I mentioned the transponder, that was for aircraft that are not using the G1000 functionality. Everything else outside of this, from this moment of the flight on, was awesome. I was actually trying to think of things to do, so I put it in autopilot fairly early, watched the autopilot engage, used it to adjust my altitude, used it to adjust my heading. As you guys saw, when we first lined up for the runway, I was able to tap the heading knob and it centered the heading indicator to our current position. And then everything from here was all autopilot control, right down to the point where we got onto our ILS course. I did a quick circuit, just sort of did a circle around Tucson International Airport. And then as I started to approach the perpendicular to the ILS course, I entered in the ILS information using the rotaries and everything. And at the last minute, hit the nav button, let the aircraft turn to course. I left the landing and all that out because at that point, obviously the G1000 functionality is pretty moot. We're beyond it at that point. So you guys won't see the landing. The idea here was simply to display all of the functions and features and the accuracy and the ease of use that the FlightSimBuilder G1000 panel provides. Setup was a breeze. And again, part of that being because I already own SPAD Next. I simply had to click on a button, have it search online, and everything was mapped. So from the time that I got everything plugged in, there's only 3 cables to plug in. You have a USB, an HDMI, and a power cord. Now, the cool thing about the HDMI, while we're going through, and you guys just continue to watch the flight, see how it's performing, and decide if it's something that's interesting to you. The HDMI, I actually have going into I think they're called Smart Tech is what I use, an HDMI to USB 3.0 adapter. So it's not even using a direct HDMI to the video card connection. It's going through USB, and the response rate on the LCD screen was perfect. I have the refresh rate set to high inside the simulator, and everything worked absolutely fantastic. Again, to FlightSimBuilder, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to represent this product. This is extremely high quality, you guys. The price is up there, guys. I'm not going to fool you. I'm not going to give you any kind of tricks. This particular device comes in at about $650 US. So I'm very grateful that I had this opportunity. I will tell you that the price to functionality to quality, in my personal opinion, is there. And you guys have heard me call out plenty of developers saying, yes, this is a great product, but it's priced too high. In this particular scenario, I don't believe that's the case. The bezeling, the button work, the print, the texture, the tactile feel, the response time, the brightness and controllability of the display itself, the clarity in the display. Clearly, a lot of effort was put into this, and I do feel that it matches up there with many of the other higher-end cockpit equipment competitors. And guys, I will tell you right now that being at the Flight Sim Expo 2023, there are very similar devices to this that are far more expensive. So I want you guys to keep that in mind before anyone starts tossing out that is too expensive. do your research, because this kind of equipment you'll find goes way higher than that depending on the developer that you look at. So I definitely think that they are absolutely in the range where they should be, given the aforementioned pieces of quality. The worst thing that I was able to find on this entire configuration was in the top right corner of the display. They have a rubber bezel between the plastic and the display, and the rubber bezel has sort of separated a little bit from the top right corner. And I mean a little bit, I'm talking a 1/16 of an inch might be taking too large. Okay, it's probably less than that. You guys can go back to the previous part of the video where we were doing a close-up shot, and you might be able to see it. That is the worst thing that I have been able to find with this display. I have been using it for the past 2 days very, very frequently, really putting it through its tests. I've done short flights, long flights, big flights, you name it, airliners, GA, and have found functionality and use to every single one of the aircraft that I have flown, and found some very neat aspects of it. I will tell you, in the airliners, especially doing any kind of IFR flight with as often as we are getting command from ATC, it was an extremely welcomed piece of equipment that was, again, it's all self-contained. Everything's in this one box. Just about everything that you need is right here for any aircraft you fly. So do not think that it is a general aviation limited piece of hardware only. It is absolutely not. And it has a ton of functionality that can be transferred over to the various different aircraft. And the cool thing is, like, the primary flight display, or nav displays, I should say, on the airliners as well, can be popped out into this screen right here. And so you have your nav display up close as well. But it was really, really cool, especially in conjunction with Beyond ATC. As you guys know, I have access to that software at the moment and am able to test a lot of things with it. So with the constant radio communication, I didn't let Beyond ATC use any of that. So if you are someone who uses VATSIM, who uses Pilot Edge, who, you know, is using any kind of ATC program, it was really a ton of fun being able to manually tune the frequencies without having to fumble and reach for the mouse and trying to maintain control of my aircraft. It was very, very fun. This thing was a ton of fun to use. And again, I'm going to stress, my top points of quality here are from dollar amount, which is $650 US, the quality of the build, the quality of the buttons, the quality of the rotaries, the tactile feel, the functionality, the response time, the form factor, the mounting plate, the ease of connection and setup using SPAD Next. Again, I will be testing at a later time with MSFS Direct, but right now I am using SPAD Next. Putting all of those together, I do feel the price to benefit is there. If you guys are interested in a second opinion, I highly recommend you check out SimHanger Flight Simulations. Mark over there does a wonderful job with his reviews. He also did a review of this particular product, and I highly recommend you guys check out his channel as well. He's much like myself. He doesn't pull any punches. He gives things as they are, raw and honest. And so if you guys want that second opinion, I highly recommend you guys check that out as well. He has a wonderful channel, by the way. He's got a great channel. So the rest of this video, guys, is pretty much just completing the ILS turn. Once we start making the turn left towards the final, that's pretty much where the video stops. We're in really tight, so you guys are going to see the ILS course past the aircraft. I turned way too late on this one. But again, thank you so much to FlightSimBuilder for providing me with this amazing piece of hardware. And you guys, it is absolutely a game changer. So if you are truly looking to step up your flight simulation experience, to start getting into the more authentic piece of hardware, FlightSimBuilder is a huge recommendation. I have been looking into hardware like this for a very long time, you guys. And I didn't know about them until I saw the video on Mark's channel. And the reason why I had stayed away from any hardware like this was because the prices were so much higher than what FlightSimBuilder is charging for their particular piece of hardware. I can't stress it enough. You guys have heard me call out developers before who have given me products where I've said, yes, this is a very cool product. No, I don't think it's necessarily worth the price. I said that with a particular piece of VR hardware very recently. So keep that in mind. As always, the opinions and statements that you guys are hearing in my videos are mine and mine alone. That has not changed and never will. So let me know what you guys think down below. Make sure you guys check them out, FlightSimBuilder.com. And as always, you guys stay safe and healthy, and I will see you folks in the next one. Take care, guys.